Ferrari in various places, and also because there are more people in kind of European countries that would know of Le Mans over the two car companies. They've targeted that because it's about the specific race event, so they'd know the race event like more.
Okay, guys, I we're live. By the way, I watched the Canadian Grand Prix, and
Uh,
it's just the same. Like they just follow the same two or three cars the whole race, and it was not very exciting. I
Like,
hate to say it.
admittedly, last week's was not the greatest until about 5 laps for the end, and suddenly everything just like blows up, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" Like, just teammates crashing into
Yes.
each other. It's insane.
So
Yeah.
for the motorsport people watching, I have now watched a motorsport.
yeah.
I would have said if you should go back a couple of weeks, about a month or so, you should have watched this year's Indy 500. That was mental. As the Indy 500
Yes.
normally is.
So for this chat about motorsport movies, we've got one motorsport fan of the three of us, and now one of us who's seen one Formula One race, and one who's still yet to see any. So
Awesome. Okay, I'm hitting the music now. You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast where I need to keep up with the intro music in my head because otherwise it bleeds through my speakers and it's double playing the sound whenever you watch it. An independent podcast about film, topics of film theory, criticism, history, etc. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who is chanting USA just constantly these days. Can't help myself.
yeah. I'm Sam. I'm the one who doesn't mind being called a rat because they're very intelligent.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one who, a couple of weeks, months ago, stood under the podium where one of the people in the films was actually on the podium. So that's my claim to fame.
Nice. Yeah, Kieran, you dressed up. You have the MotoGP beanie.
Yeah.
And I could have sworn this shirt had cars on it,
Yes.
but no, it's just palm
It's
trees.
the 75 MotoGP on it as well. So it was 75 years last year. And I also have some of my signatures from various riders on there and random things that were handed out from all my acquisitions and stuff. And I also have a T-shirt signed by a Ayagura, who is a current MotoGP rider and the reigning Moto2 world champion as well. At some point, I will get his knee slider that I've been promised for about a year now, and it's never materialized. I don't think it actually exists. Hopefully, I'll get that when I go to the Superbikes.
Is MotoGP your go-to kind of motorsport then?
I mean,
For fun, or...
I will do all of them. I do the Formula One, the Formula Two, the Formula Three, the MotoGP, the Moto2, the Moto3, the Formula E, the IndyCar, the Indy Next. I'm going to the World Superbikes in a couple of weeks' time. In terms of going to stuff, though, the MotoGP is like because myself and my parents we're all into it. It's like 3 times as expensive for one ticket. So essentially, like three of us can go to the MotoGP over one person to the Formula One. So it's just like stupid. And the last couple of years, the last 2 years for me, the last 3 or 4 for my parents, my dad he works for a company that builds lorry mounted cranes called Hiab, and one of the cylinder suppliers sponsors a Moto3 team. So through them, we've actually had VIP tickets. So we've been kind of chilling in the hospitality. We've been in the pit boxes, in that kind of thing, which is how I was managed to get whisked out under the podium for the British MotoGP this year. I was kind of on the grid for the Moto3 and that kind of stuff. So it's just we have those connections for the GP. It's not like I dislike the F1. I'm an F1 addict as well, but we've got the connections for the MotoGP, which is what I've got all the stuff. And so I've been sort of 5 times for that and a couple of times in the VIP as well.
That's awesome.
I know, right?
It's great when you find a sport to go to where like the tickets are not super expensive. That's a real problem these days.
I mean, it's still not the cheapest thing in the world. There are interesting things like for to try and get people in, and actually the UK is not great because Silverstone, the racetrack where most of the big events are held, just keep jacking the prices up because they can. And it was a major issue for the F1 last year when, like, 2 weeks ago, they'd only sold half the tickets, and everyone, even the F1 drivers, were like, Silverstone, lower the prices. Like, stop charging 500 quid for one ticket for one day for a grandstand seat. Like, this is ridiculous. Nobody can afford it, you know? But then some places, so a couple of years ago, I think I heard the Australian MotoGP. If you lived within a certain radius, school children got access for free to the Friday practice sessions. So you could essentially come, like, so essentially the local schools would essentially go on a school trip
Yeah.
to the practice session. So there's weird stuff like that. But yeah, it's just the F1 is just
Mm.
ridiculously expensive. You just can't do it.
Mm.
A lot of this is from Netflix, but the influx from Drive to Survive. But we'll come on to the thoughts on documentaries and motorsport soon.
Yeah, I mean, kind of sports and kind of any live entertainment in general have kind of they've all followed similar kind of models over like the last decade, especially, haven't they? In terms of just jacking up the price and kind of tickets, even when they are reasonably kind of priced to start with, they're all bought en masse, and sold back to you're like much kind of jacked up prices again, like 5, 6 times, 10 times the price.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's so kind of unregulated, people can get away with it and they will keep getting away with it. So,
And
and
the thing, the,
as always, the loser is the consumer at the end.
the thing with Silverstone is that for especially for the Formula One, a good maybe half, 2/3 of the races, the countries they're hosted in, they get sort of government subsidies as part of their Minister for Tourism and Entertainment, these kinds of departments. The UK doesn't do that. So Silverstone has to raise all the money themselves rather than getting additional grants from kind of the government, which is why they kind of jack it up a little bit, but then they kind of take the absolute crap and just whack it way up, and it's just really annoying. But still, fabulous racing, and it's a beautiful circuit. But it's just like, just bring them down,
Well, do we want to start with the documentary because the two movies are kind of similar, or
Sure.
yeah, I mean,
We can do,
let's
yeah.
do that.
because
Yeah.
I was very intrigued by this documentary, coming in knowing nothing at all.
Yeah. I mean, I came in, so I know next to nothing about Formula One, but I know more about Formula One than I do about MotoGP.
Yeah. So MotoGP is the bike equivalent of Formula One. All the bikes are completely prototype. So it's different. So something like IndyCar in the US, Jacob, and they did go to Canada once or twice. I don't think Canada's on the calendar at the moment. They're trying to get Mexico racing as well. That is all a spec chassis, and you've got two engine manufacturers, and the rest is how you set up the car. F1 is completely bespoke. There's certain parts that you can trade between teams, but for the most part, it's 100%. Here are the regulations, build your own team. MotoGP is pretty much the same. Now there's a little bit of trickle down, so it's kind of manufacturers will essentially have like an A team and a B team. So you'll have the main team will be the latest parts, and then you'll have another team which will essentially buy last year's bike normally off one of the other teams. Sometimes they'll give a 2025 bike, and sometimes it's the same, but normally, even if it's not, the factory team have just like 3 times as many guys working on the setup, so they're more likely to gain the advantage out of that. It's been a little bit changed over the years, but that's kind of the setup that is going at the moment. Races are normally around 40 minutes, which is about sort of, I don't know, maybe 40% of the sort of the F1 lengths. And the reason for that is that they are heaving like half a ton bikes from side to side with sheer muscle power for 40 odd minutes at 160 mile an hour. It's going to drain you. And they're like, yeah, let's not do this. The people that do kind of so we're going to discuss Le Mans 24-hour. I think there is a 24-hour bike race. Normally the endurance are like 8 hours or 10 hours, something like that, and they do it in shift as well. Even those guys, they're just like insane because it's like total like 4 hours probably. Some of them like heaving these bikes side to side.
What I love about this documentary is like it does start out a little bit romantic, and then man, it just goes way off the hinges.
Yeah. So the main focus of the documentary is of a specific period
Mm.
of
Which,
MotoGP.
which we just said, I think we've named it, is hitting the apex, isn't it?
Yeah. So hitting the apex from 2015, and kind of the reason why I picked this one, I hadn't seen it, and two, because the narrator is Brad Pitt, who's obviously in the F1 film that's come out recently. Also, there's another link that on Monday, the European courts finally allowed Liberty Media, who own the rights to Formula One, to take over the kind of, I'm not sure is just the marketing or full ownership of MotoGP as well, because they initially tried to, and then there was a challenge going, hang on, you already own Formula One, MotoGP as well. You're suddenly getting a monopoly on things, and you might get towards it as well, and suddenly it's not fair. That has been overturned, so there is now another link recently this week. So we've got Brad Pitt and everything going in like that as well.
A little off topic, is that going to bring more money into MotoGP?
I think it might do, because Liberty Media essentially came into F1. One of the first things they did was green light Drive to Survive, which has pumped about 3 times as many eyeballs onto Formula One as it has before. There's some good sides and bad sides to that, because there are now times Daniel Ricciardo, who's a former F1 driver, got introduced several times as Drive to Survive star and racing driver, and he's like, do they know that I actually do this? Do they think I'm an actor? Like, what is this? They do know I actually drive these cars, right? So it might be a thing. It will be interesting to see how that works, and it'll be interesting to see how World Superbike fares, which is not one of the sports discussed. Superbikes is essentially, if MotoGP is you have to build it yourselves, World Superbikes is these are all technically road legal. We're going to tune them up to hell, but the basic bike you can buy off the shelf. And so there's stuff around that. That's kind of the difference between the two. When you tune them up to hell, they're only like 2 seconds off the prototype around the same tracks, which is mind-blowing. But yeah. Can you tell I'm the motorsport nut here? So yeah, hitting the apex. The focus of it is a very specific couple of riders and couple of periods. So around, I'm going to say 2003, 4, 5 to 2013 is where the last season they do. And it's mainly focusing on 4 riders with a couple of extras. So in 2009, Colin Edwards, who was a GP rider, I think he was a World Superbike World Champion as well, at least very successful in it, and is in this documentary, is a couple of talking heads parts of it as well. He coined the term aliens to refer to 4 riders, and I can see if I can have the quote here from an article. It says, "But as I've said before, I've got to be pleased to be finished next best behind those 4 guys, or should I say aliens. They are riding out of this world, and to be right behind them means I'm doing the job I can, and that's about as good as I can hope for at the moment." So the main 4 that are generally associated with this are Valentino Rossi, Danny Pedrosa, Casey Stoner, and Jorge Lorenzo. And the documentary does go into 2 others, which is Marco Simoncelli, who there's whole things about that. And then right at the cusp, because this came out in 2015, so the last thing they covered is 2013 season, with the start of the rise of Marc Marquez, who is still going and is currently leading the World Championship. Hilariously enough for Jacob, because he was thinking about, oh, this guy's now on a Ducati, not doing very well. He's winning on a Ducati, and Ducati are now dominating everything. It's insane to watch this and go, oh, Ducati are awful, and now they literally are just destroying everyone.
It's also hilarious to watch this, and like, you're seeing this guy being, not by that point in the documentary, they've stopped contrasting them with Rossi. But there's a point where like, Rossi's 31. He's over the hill. He'll never be able to keep up with these kids. And like, he's still doing it at the end. And like, seeing that Marquez is now like older than Rossi was at the start of this documentary, and is still like the top. Like,
yeah, it's a little bit mad, and I'm not going to take the hat off because I am starting to boil.
I mean, that's a change that's happened across all sports. Like LeBron James drafted in 2003, he's still going. Like, good for old dudes, still able to play sports.
The thing with watching this, I mean, there's good points and bad points about this documentary. I've seen online a lot of people have said kind of they got their interest in MotoGP from parts of this documentary. and kind of and what they tried to do is again focus on these six riders, but the four aliens and a couple of others. Throughout the period of dominance. And there were some other winners. So in 2006, we had Nicky Hayden, who was an American rider who won the championship, beating Rossi, the Kentucky kid. He passed away in 2018 after an accident, I think it was. But he was the last American world champion. He might have been the last American winner. I can't remember if Ben Speed's got one in 2010 or 11, but like major success. So there are things there as well, but it's mainly those four. And what it tries to do is focus on the riders and go into them, and just then show the action on track. The problems I have with this is that you're trying to go into like 5 or 6 different people over like 7, 8, 9 years. And what you have essentially end up with is kind of an extended YouTube video essay.
Yeah.
It's a very highly competent YouTube video essay, but that's kind of what it is. We're not kind of documentary sort of.
Yeah. And it's like 2 hours and 15 minutes long, isn't it? And it's like there's a lot to pack in there. Obviously, a lot of time to dedicate to each of the riders, but it is a tough sit. And that watching it for that length of time with Brad Pitt's admittedly quite lovely speaking voice, it does kind of lull you. Kind of it's I wouldn't say monotonous, but there's not much kind of variety to it.
I was going to say when you compare it to things like, again, something like Drive to Survive, which is sort of 8 episodes a season, and everyone complains they don't go into enough detail and loads of stuff, and they miss loads of stuff out. That's one season of Formula One, and it's probably not 8 hours total. You can kind of see where things are missing. And also, if either of you seen the 4-part Brawn documentary, which was done with Keanu Reeves going into it. And what that was about, the 2009 season of Formula One, where essentially at the end of the year when the financial crisis hit, the Honda team and Honda and I think BMW both pulled out. And Ross Brawn, who had won like 5, 6 championships with Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, essentially went, you know what I'm going to do? The only way to save this and save like hundreds of people's like livelihoods and jobs, at least for a couple of months and hope, is to essentially buy the team. And he bought Honda for £1. And the guy from Honda still has the £1 coin that he did. And essentially what happened is they exploited a loophole in the rules, got an early lead, and managed to win the Constructors and Drivers' Championship in the only year they existed, because the year after, Mercedes bought them out. And Keanu Reeves does a really good 4-part, I think it won an Emmy, documentary miniseries. And he does interesting things, like you have Keanu Reeves talking to various people, but then he'll also do stuff like he's talking about like something that happened in like a boardroom somewhere, and they mock up sort of what kind of happened at that point. So it's almost like kind of he's sort of walking into like a dramatization of a memory sort of thing, and they try and do interesting things with it. I mean, I'm not an avid documentary watcher, but when people do that in documentaries and they try and do something a little bit different, they try and dramatize things, they try and bring different aspects in, you do notice it and you go, they've gone the extra mile. It's not just old footage and a couple of interviews with somebody monologuing over the top. And as interesting as the documentary is, and I mean, I love the sport anyway, I do sit there and go, this is a well-made but quite dull documentary, because it's not trying to do anything unique. I kept waiting for it to try and do something, to follow like one of the riders into their homes or something like that, but it never does.
I mean, it's as dry as the desert, isn't it? It's just a real kind
and I mean,
variation. It's just short of like reading out dates and time, and like times.
I was going to say, like,
races.
I mean, like, I love the thing. Again, 5 weeks ago, I was stood under the podium for the main races. They were spraying the champagne. I was on the grid for the support races. I watched actually the Moto3 race from between the pit lane and the main racetrack. So there's a little strip there where they kind of set all the pit boards up and they hang them out, stuff like that. me and my mum watched the main race on the boards, stood there watching them go past. Like I'm an avid fan, and even I found this documentary dull. And it's not the information that's being provided; it's the way that the information is given across.
I think it wants to be two different or potentially 3 to 6, but the first part is like Rossi and Simoncelli, which this probably just should have been that. It should have been Italian focused.
Yeah, because that rivalry in particular really leaps off the screen, doesn't it? I just love how it doesn't sugarcoat it. Really highlights like them. It's like they're, as you often get with like top class sportsmen, you know, just trying to one up each other. Almost like their pettiness, you know, between like their approaches to like following the rules to the letter of or not, you know, and how. Actually constantly one up each other, and their personalities really do kind of shine through.
I'm actually looking up to see if there is a documentary purely on Valentino Rossi. It looks like there's one called Fastest, which maybe is what I should have looked at, because Valentino Rossi, if you haven't heard of him, like did something, and this documentary tries to do it. It doesn't quite capture exactly how mad Valentino Rossi fandom was.
I mean, before this, name a motorbike rider, and he'd be the only one I could have named before seeing this. You know,
well,
it's just
like,
and the middle bit is that wandering in the desert of, well, he's not winning anymore, and it doesn't seem to pick up on, well, let's follow a lot, like whoever the Spanish guy was, or let's follow Pedrosa, but it's jumping between all of them as they win, and then finally it's like, oh, and then Mark Marquez shows up, and then now it's a Mark Marquez documentary.
Yeah, it's again, it's trying to do too much in too little time, and therefore it spreads itself very thin. I would again love to see a whole thing just on Valentino Rossi. I think people that didn't go to the races and weren't into it do not understand. How they put it this way, his hometown, they show in here that they ring the bells every time he got a win. They changed the speed limit to 46 kilometers an hour in his hometown after him. Like, they've changed the laws of the road in celebration. Like, you go to every race, even now, there are still he's retired for like 4 years. There are still hillsides plastered in Valentino Rossi yellow. I will say this to Sam as well. If you go back to Doctor Who and watch Aliens in London World War III, Mickey's computer has a VR-46 sticker on it. And this is in the height, and I know because I watched it, like, oh my god, there's a VR-46. Like,
so
they came in, and when you have these events, when it's not on, you have kind of all the shops and stalls where you can, and all the bike, kind of the Yamaha and Ducati and Honda all set out their stalls so you can try the different bikes and maybe make a purchase, all that stuff, and you get the team apparel and stuff like that. They used to have, like, everyone used to have kind of the stalls and the stands. Valentino Rossi, when he was coming in, it used to have like a mega tent about 7 times the size of like Honda's like thing. The might of Honda, and Valentino Rossi on his own used to have a thing that's 5 times the size, big inflatable thing. It's insane. There used to be a thing that every race is a home race for Valentino Rossi. Even the Spanish races where they like kind of revive into the hills, it's still a home race for Valentino Rossi, and everyone goes, "Oh, you got Rossi." Yeah, fair enough. He was that kind of fever, what somebody like Hamilton is doing now for Britain in Formula One, or what if you've seen the Senna documentary with Ayrton Senna in Brazil. He was that kind of figure. Like, when Valentino Rossi passes away, there will be like 10 days of national mourning. It's that kind of thing.
They express that in the film by bringing in these sedate old priests to talk about him, and they bring in like a single person to talk about him, and like they never capture this energy that you're speaking of, because to me it's just like there's nobody that's a fan of this sport except for Brad Pitt and the people in these stands.
Admittedly, hilariously enough, I talked about the Brawn documentary with Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves was in the Ducati garage last weekend, which is hilarious. And they're all combining everything. Yeah, it's not very much a British and European thing. In Spain and in Italy, it is headlines, like straight up.
It's because
it's the
that's all they're
equivalent
allowed
of
to drive there. That and Fiats, like.
well, and Japan as well, obviously, because Yamaha and Honda were the top for so long, and now it's Ducati, and it was really quite funny to see everything. But yeah, it doesn't capture this. The one thing I did appreciate is the amount of time that went into talking about Marco Simoncelli
Yeah.
and his rise, and then his eventual passing. I wasn't massively into it. I'd watched sort of races here and there. I think the first season I properly watched all the way through was probably 2013. But I'd seen races here and there. I knew what it was. And I remember my dad telling me, we were in the car, and I can roughly remember where it was, that Marco Simoncelli had been in an accident and died on track. And put it this way, I knew which one it was because he was the one that always had his long hair out the back of the helmet. Like, that's how I knew which one he was. And to this day, and they go into it at the end, his dad, Paolo Simoncelli, still to this day runs a Moto 3 team. And actually, this year, their garage was next to the CIP Green Power team, which is the team that we've got the sponsorship and we are kind of affiliated with. And hilariously enough, we had a wine tasting evening as kind of an event hosted by some of the teams that all the corporate stuff. And the guy running it, I think his name was Antonio Neppa, is the uncle of one of the riders for the SIC 53 team. And so we're talking to him quite a bit about what's going on. And when we were watching the race for the Moto 3, next to us was one of the pit board guys for the other rider for that team, and he was so happy because the other guy, I think, got second over the line. He was penalised later, but he got second over the line, and this pit board guy was so happy that there's kind of this, not only his guy won, but there's this legacy of Marco Simoncelli being carried on. And I can't remember when it was. I want to say 18, 19. You had a moment when one of the riders, I think it was Tatsuki Suzuki at the time, was racing in that team, and he got the win at Misano, which is now named after Marco Simoncelli. So it was almost like Simoncelli had won his now kind of named after thing. Obviously, this is all after the time of the documentary, but I liked seeing that because they spent so much time on it. Because he would have been up there. He was on the rise, and had he not had the accident in Malaysia, he would have been there.
Yeah.
And sometimes motorsport is dangerous, and that's like actually I think across all three films, what they do actually capture at times, that motorsport is dangerous.
Yeah, like the opening of Rush, it's about kind of in the 70s how two of them will die a season, just literally that.
And in a couple of months ago, we had two riders die in one of the British Superbike support races, I think it was, and actually in the GP paddock, we haven't had a GP rider pass away since Marco Simoncelli. But I think in 2016 or 15, I can't remember, Luis Salom was in Moto 2 and he had an accident at Barcelona, which he passed away in. And in the documentary, in some of the footage, I think it's with Marquez, he's battling specifically with Tom Luthi, who was eventually moved up to MotoGP for one season, I think it was. He had the thing where in Moto2, he'd always finish sort of second, third, or fourth. He was never quite. Occasionally, he'd get like the win, but never string a season enough together in order to make it up. But because he was Swiss, he was very close to a young Swiss rider called Jason Dupasquier, who was just coming through. And in 2019, I want to say, Dupasquier had an accident in the qualifying session for Moto3 and lost his life there. And Luti's, one of the reasons he stepped down was because that affected him so badly, because motorsport is dangerous. Hilariously enough, though, we did actually see him on the grid for the Moto3 a couple of weeks ago, because one of the riders in the team that we're with is Swiss, and he's kind of a mentor, so he was kind of there. He's still hanging around, but one of the reasons for him retiring was the fact that death had hit him so hard. And you know what, if nothing else, again, the documentary is fairly bland, and some of the parts with Pedrosa and stuff, that don't hit well, and then it focuses a lot on Marquez near the end. Kind of the last third is pretty much the Marquez thing, which is really funny because this was done before. He just destroys everyone for like 10 years solid. But the amount of time it takes going into Simoncelli, if nothing else, is what it should do. And maybe they should have actually focused the entire thing on
Yeah.
just the one rider, maybe Simoncelli and his
Yeah,
legacy.
I mean, that's one thing I was going to ask. Would it have worked better as more like the Keanu Reeves thing, as like a mini, like a documentary mini series, maybe with each episode, doing like a profile of each of the
Yes.
riders, maybe.
Yeah, it would have done so much better, and just to spend time going into each one, doing something a bit more different. I appreciate the sentiment, and again, the four core riders there, excluding Marquez and Simoncelli, are kind of very often kind of lumped together as these kind of four riders that had just ridiculous skills out of this world.
You forget the Australian guy was there because he retires, and so he's just gone. And
here's the thing: Casey Stoner still kind of like advises for films and stuff like that, and pretty much everyone in the know just goes, "Yeah, Casey Stoner for the last sort of 40 odd years was this person who kind of hated pretty much everything to do with MotoGP aside from getting on the bike and going fast. That's the only thing he liked about it." And he kind of actually didn't like it. He just knew that he was good at it.
Yeah.
Which is why he did
Well,
it.
it creates a weird editing contrast when right after Simoncelli dies, it's him retiring. He's like, yeah, just like, I don't want to do media. Like, that's real hard. And he retires. And like the contrast between guy literally dies and a guy's like, oh, I don't want to talk to the press. Like, that really, it brought it down a lot.
Yeah. And it's because they're going chronologically, and I think then you actually have this up and down thing. Although they're trying to maintain the continuity, you have this up and down with the individual stories, which works in something like, again, the next two we're going to talk about, which are only about a year sort of thing, and focus on one or two drivers or teams, for example. With this, you've got 6 riders going over sort of just under 10 years, let's say. And I think you should have done it again, like a mini series, maybe 6 episodes if you're going to do it. And even if you had to focus on the entire career of one, like, I don't know, Rossi, the start to like 13, 14, whenever this was made. And then when you go back to somebody like Pedrosa, you can then go, that's how he slips into Rossi's story. And then when you get to the next one with Lorenzo or Simoncelli, you go, okay, that's how this slots in. And you build it up rather than having to go up and down like that. So I can see how some people have got into it because of what it's trying to do. For me, it's too thin on the ground. And not even Brad Pitt can save it from being, as I said, a very long YouTube video essay.
Well, and like I said, the beginning does, it makes it look exciting. It's fun to do it. You fall off the bike, but you learn. Then Simoncelli dies, and then they start being like, yeah, and then this guy ripped off part of his finger. This other dude kept breaking every collarbone he had. He broke every ligament in his foot. And it's like, oh, yeah, this is a terrible sport. And there is sort of an attrition quality to the documentary itself that very much mirrors the attrition of this sport. But that's that's not good. You don't want that for your racing
Yeah, I mean,
story.
the safety is getting better, and there are less and less tragedies that are happening on 2 wheels. But obviously, compared to 4 wheels, the 4 wheels are in a kind of closed environment cockpit. They've got stuff on either side. With the bikes, if you fall off, you fall off, and quite often you can go slam into a concrete wall, something ridiculous. So in 2004, 3 or 4, a Japanese rider, Daijiro Kato, passed away at Suzuka, and that's kind of the main reason why the MotoGP guys don't go to Suzuka anymore. People have asked why don't they go to Spa, and it's like, well, we had F2 drivers die at Spa recently. I think 2022 as well. There's another death at Spa. So it's like, you want to shove them on bikes going around there, and you also don't realize the speed. I think the top speed recorded now is a Mugello. Brad Binder got it a couple of years ago on a KTM, and it was just under 230 mile an hour before he hit the brakes. That's miles an hour. And acceleration wise, because their power to weight ratio, they accelerate ridiculously, like much faster than like the modern F1 cars. The reason the lap times are slow is because obviously when you're going around a corner, the F1 cars have 4 tires on there, and so they've got so much grip. These guys have to lean them over at like sort of 60-degree lean angles, but the speed's ridiculous. And so, like, again, you do have this kind of tragedy element to it, which at least they explored that. But I think, yeah, you're on the right thing, that the contrast between it is so weird.
Yeah. It never got old, seeing that like, recurring image of just the slow-mo footage of them on a lean, and literally there's just so little kind of distance between their knee and the track, isn't there? It's just the
Well, I mean,
angle.
they are scraping it.
Absolutely
There
ridiculous.
is there's a couple of moments where occasionally a couple of riders, just at the right angle, the right temperature, so they can get it, like they come back and you go, yeah, we have scuff marks on their helmets from where they're getting their head on the actual ground. It's just insane, like what they do.
The little bits where they do discuss strategy or something are interesting. Like when they show, so here's how Marquez leans compared to how Rossi used to lean, and here's how Rossi adapted to lean better. And like,
Yeah,
I wish there had been more of that stuff. I don't know,
yeah,
or less.
also,
Either way,
it's almost like you've got that stuff, but they also want to do quick. We need to recount the season so we can show all the points tallies of how it goes along, and that is the least interesting part of it. Actually, the interesting stuff is the behind the scenes things of the people and how they're adapting and stuff like that, and like all the mechanics stuff at the back and how they're having to do things. Like when I was there, MotoGP this year, our little group got taken into the guys that do all the technology in the leathers and the airbags. So they've got like 20,000 flipping computers in the airbags and in the suits, so that if somebody comes off, if it goes at like a certain speed at a certain height or something like that, the airbags will automatically deploy in the suits, and then they'll get them, and as soon as they like come off, they'll whisk them straight back to these kind of couple of trucks and plug in the computers and download the data instantly. Well, that stuff is actually, in a certain way, far more interesting than the actual kind of how the races go and the points go. And
well,
to its credit, that's what Drive to Survive, to a certain extent, actually manages to do.
I couldn't tell you much about these guys, like their personal lives, where, you know, or not personal lives, sorry, their interests in like building bikes and stuff, because with our movies you have Ken Miles and Nicky Lauda, who are like car nerds, and none of these guys, it seemed like, knew about engines. Like what kind of work are they doing outside of get on bike and don't fall off?
Again, it's so thin that you don't
know.
get kind of either side of it, and that's really annoying. It's trying to do too much at once. It's not the worst documentary I've ever seen, but again, it's like, if you're going to do this, like, cut it to like the core four and make it like half an hour shorter at the very least, and
By
just
the
show
way,
the rivalry
who
between
are the
them.
core four?
Again, not the survivors.
Oh no, I know we lost Kieran. We
And
lost our
Casey
expert.
Stoner.
Oh,
I
Yeah, sorry, Casey Stoner.
No. Am I
No.
back?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good radio.
Casey, am I back?
Yes.
Am I good? Yeah, very good radio. Okay, so Casey Stoner, Rossi, Lorenzo, and Pedrosa
Nice.
are the kind of the aliens, the main four. And I think you're focusing on those. I mean, you do get bits. The one thing I haven't seen, there's the press conference. Am I still here? Yeah.
In and out.
Dodgy internet radio. There's a yeah. The press conference they have. I'm just gonna pass it on. Okay. The press conference between Simoncelli and Lorenzo after the incident they have, where Simoncelli's like, it's all great, and Lorenzo's just so sort of like angry about it. And this was his persona. He was the serious one that went all the way through. What they don't do either as well is say kind of what each rider does differently, because one of the things that Lorenzo is still known for, and other riders are compared to, is if you got him out in front, he'd say he'd find a lap time that was like almost on the limit, and then every lap it was like a tenth of a second off every lap for the entire race, and essentially just nobody could match just the metronome sort of thing and falling off like that. That's the interesting side of him. All the other stuff are different. Doesn't go into that.
You know what? I do wish they
Right.
had gotten into
I've
that.
hated. Yeah, I've gone on about this documentary enough. Brad Pitt, well done for at least trying to bring some Hollywood to it. Hopefully, there will be an upgrade in the future. But yeah,
Yes.
maybe we'll get a biopic of Rossi.
Yeah, maybe.
Ooh, yeah, that would be good. Cast Pedro Pascal.
God, can you imagine? Well, he's
Right.
in everything else.
Yeah. Right, let's get on to some four wheels. Let's double the
Yeah,
trouble.
yeah, some four wheels and some dramatizations of
Yeah.
this sport. So so I'm going to talk a bit about Rush, which is Ron Howard's 2013 film, written by Peter Morgan. Just they're a very good team because I think Peter Morgan's responsible for Ron Howard's other really good film of this century, which was Frost Nixon. They seem to be a good combo. And Peter Morgan's best known for doing like biopics, dramatizations of real events. He did the Queen and the Crown and stuff like that. So it's very much in his wheelhouse, dramatizing kind of these big personalities from entertainment and history. So I'm not obviously I'm not into Formula One. No, next to nothing about it, but going into seeing this because I was in the cinema with my friend Stefan, the big motorsport fan. But even I'd kind of heard of Niki Lauda. It's just one of those kind of iconic figures. I think everyone has heard of. But I think this film works not because it's kind of recreation of this particular period, infamous periods in a sports history, but it's the fact that it can kind of bring anyone into it. Kind of it's engaging, no matter what kind of how much interest you have in it from the start. I mean, I think that's usually a sign of a good documentary, but also a sign of good drama films. If you don't know anything about the subject, but it still will engage just because it's a story well told, well kind of executed.
I know it's a fiction version, but in the same way that something like Challengers is good, even if you have no interest in tennis. This is good even if you have no interest in motorsport.
Yeah. So it's classic kind of conflicts, between like two big personalities, and it's basically it's precision versus heart. These two kind of different kind of approaches to sport they both love. So it's Niki Lauda, the
would we say heart or would we say alcohol?
I mean, James Hunt would have said big balls, but
yeah. Yes, it's Niki Lauda, very, very precise and technical Austrian driver versus James Hunt, kind of instinctual maverick British kind of personality.
Are we sure he's not American? Like he was born here and then somebody dropped him off as an experiment or something?
Oh no, he is very British as James Hunt.
Yeah. I mean, became more like a late night entertainment personality, didn't he? Towards the end of his life, just turning up on chat shows, and just being generally a playboy, really.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And ended up in the commentary booth for the F1 as well, and there's just some things where it's just like, nobody told him that you can't say that live on air, that kind of thing. There's one incident later in life where in the commentary booth, I can't remember what race it was, you'd got one mic shared between the two commentators, and Murray Walker, who was the voice of Formula One, did it for like 50 odd years, and James Hunt was his kind of sidekick. And at one point, James Hunt obviously felt that Murray had been taking too long, because he just reached over and yanked out the cable from the microphone just to cut him off completely. It's just like, nope, that's it, my turn. So he definitely maintained the attitude throughout his life. That was just the kind of person he was.
That's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, this is obviously the dramatization of their kind of rivalry, in particular the lead up to and the eventual kind of season that and 76 season that ended with Mikada's horrific accident at the Nürburgring. And apparently, when this script was originally being shopped around, so it'd been written on spec, and it was waited for buy for years and years. They didn't know what scale it was going to be. It was always going to be a British kind of film, a British production.
Yeah.
Because the James Hunt kind of side of it. But to start with, I don't think they even knew whether they were going to have any actual race scenes in it, or whether it's going to be like dramatizing like the moments between the races, like they did for like Danny Boyle did for his Steve Jobs film. The kind of the conversations in the lead up to the product launches. Would be a film of that scale. But yeah, they eventually kind of got a proper budget behind it, got a big Hollywood director on board, and it became what it is. And it's the way the kind of the races and the race scenes are kind of recreated and kind of actually visualized are pretty stunning. I think even now, I mean, so I went to see it in the cinema with my mate Stefan, and he thought like some of the effects were a bit iffy here and there, and I think if you're used to watching the real thing every week, then but I think it kind of, it's almost like a heightened kind of reality if it's most from like the driver's perspective. You can kind of get away with that because you think, well, it's all a bit kind of all going to look a bit off anyway. It's like there's so many different forces acting on them. It's all going to look a bit weird anyway.
He takes a really impressionistic approach to the rhacing scenes.
And I can't remember who said it. Some director that had done. I'm not sure if it was the guy who did Bohemian Rhapsody or some other biopic sort of thing, when everyone's complaining it's not exactly true to life, and he went, if you want it true to life, go watch a documentary. Like, this is a biopic. We're there to heighten it. We've got to make it Hollywood and dramatize it. Yeah, exactly. So
and it's like, the water, right in your face, and sitting in the driver's perspective, like it's shot or edited and shot, I guess, very differently from Ford versus Ferrari.
And it takes some dramatic license. I think it does exaggerate their relationship, and I think they both kind of missed out later in life. Yeah, they were rivals, but they were fond of each other as well. They admired each other, I think. Didn't Nicky Lauda said it was James Hunt was the only man he ever envied.
Yeah, right at the end, yeah. And actually, I sent you guys a link to it. I don't know if you got around to watching it. There was a 5-minute video.
It's blocked in my country.
Ooh, from the Formula One website. Trump. That Nicky Lauda met James Hunt's son, and they sat down and had a conversation before Lauda passed away, obviously. And he was like, "When did you?" From beyond the grave now. Well, he goes, "When did you?"
Freddie.
And you were saying Nicky Lauda was like, I came over for British Formula 3 or whatever it was, and I met James, and James was like, yeah, you must come with me. And they essentially went to the pub, this pub that was completely like the only people who would go were slightly nutters, and it's like, so you can tell the relationship they had. It's not like a digging rivalry. The first thing they did when they met each other was go to the pub.
Yeah, and like the way they meet in the film and stuff, again, it's kind of exaggerates and tweaks a little bit, isn't it? I think to give it more of a dramatic kind of punch, really. They want them to be kind of mortal enemies from the start, which they weren't kind of in reality. There's another like brutal crash early on, which is apparently like a combination of a couple of crashes that happened around that time. The one that was mentioned was the Helmut Koenig's fatal crash, which I think was one of the main inspirations behind the one they depicts early in the film, where he basically got bisected, didn't he? I think when he hit a fence. I think I mean, there's some interest, if you read into it, there's amazing about that the safety kind of regulations that kind of came
lack
in
thereof.
As a result of this kind of like 70s period, like just the body count, and just how cars had to be built different ways, and obviously they don't race in Nürburgring anymore, do they? So
when you look into I don't know if it's motorsport or Formula One deaths, but like the chart of 1950 to 1980, it's like 50 people in the decade. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's not great. And strangely enough, Sir Jackie Stewart, who won the championship 3 times, like 69, 71, 73, something along those lines. He had a crash at Spa, and this was the old Spa, which is like 7 miles like round circuit. It's like 3 times the size of the circuit there is on now.
Yeah.
And this is before they have all the safety barriers and stuff like that. So
Mm.
bearing in mind that Jim Clark, who won the championship at least once, maybe a couple of times, a couple of years before, had died when he literally kind of lost control, barreled over, and slammed into a tree. Jackie Stewart kind of went off, landed in a ditch, and because it's like 7 miles long, it took, I think he reckoned, 40 to 45 minutes before anyone realized he was missing, went and found him, and managed to get him out. And so from then on, every race he taped a spanner to the steering wheel, so that at least if he went off, he could actually get out. And this was the start of him going, we need to start changing this. So the 70s and 80s, actually, all the drivers start appealing for better and better conditions as it goes on. And actually, when Senna dies, he dies in the same weekend because there are 2 deaths in 94. You had Roland Ratzenberger on the Saturday, and then Ayrton Senna on the Sunday, 3-time world champion. Everyone goes, okay, wake up call. It still happens. And thankfully, since then, the only death we've had in Formula One was Jules Bianchi in 2014. We've had some in other formulas, but not in F1.
By the way, as good as the film Rush is, Senna is probably the best motorsport film ever made. I mean, it's just an absolutely stunning documentary. And I mean, I just love kind of that's my favorite kind of documentary. It's just unobtrusive, just almost the raw footage, the odd bit of voiceover, and it just kind of knows so well to go, and just his kind of personality kind of radiates through that, and you kind of understand why he was an icon. But in this, so you have obviously Chris Hemsworth, doing his normal charismatic kind of turn. I mean, he's very good, and in the role is kind of you got to almost love to hate kind of James Hunt, really, because he's an absolute tosser. But you can understand why he was kind of so magnetic a personality, But then Daniel Brühl was just another level. I mean, for him to kind of say, because he's German, Daniel Brühl, and for him to when he was hired, they basically said, American, you can just use your normal accent. American audiences aren't going to know the difference. And he said, no, I'm playing an iconic Austrian. I'm going to do an Austrian accent. I'm going to get an Austrian dialect coach.
I couldn't tell Chris Hemsworth was Australian, so.
No. but you hear like Daniel Brühl speaking this, and then you hear kind of voice of actual Niki Lauda like at the end, and obviously in all the interviews done since, and it's uncanny, and just because like pre-crash, obviously he is like a subtle prosthetic, to give him a bit more of an overbite, isn't they? And it's given kind of more of his rodent-like teeth. But Sam, just this kind of personality and his physicality and intensity is really kind of comes across.
Brühl actually spent some time with Niki Lauda, kind of talking to him, not only to pick up the accent, but to pick up some of his mannerisms as well, and the way he held himself and stuff like that. And apparently when the film kind of came out, people went and asked Niki Lauda, did you do any voiceover work? Because they're like, he sounds exactly like you did when you were younger. And he's like, nope, never did anything. By contrast, again, Freddie Hunt, James Hunt's son, was very annoyed because Chris Hemsworth's portrayal, and he goes, I don't know whether I should be mad at Hemsworth or the people that wrote the script, but he goes, he played my father like an absolute bleep, and he wasn't like that, to heightening it up. And he goes, it's really annoying because Daniel Brühl went and did all this thing with Niki Lauda. It's like Chris Hemsworth never even contacted our family once to do anything.
I mean, he doesn't seem like that much of a jerk, in my opinion. Like, he calls the dude a rat, and then he beats up a reporter, but he does that to defend his rat friend. So
he also goes in kind of alcoholic fueled rants at his wife, and
Well, but she
Yeah.
left him for Richard Burton. So I mean,
and it is Richard Burton, so
that's such a
Yeah.
weird
Left it.
background story that you easily could have cut, but they're like, no, we're
Yeah.
gonna leave this
Yeah.
in.
Left an Englishman for a Welshman. I'm just saying.
Yeah. But the contrast from the start, so you have like James Huntley just buying his, just coming from money, basically befriending like a rich kind of benefactor, and then just being bankrolled onto, the early stage of his career. And then, in contrast, Nicky Lauda, again from a decently wealthy background, like a business kind of middle class kind of background, but basically having to make his own way because his family didn't kind of agree with the route he's taken on life, and kind of just pulling himself up by his bootstraps and everything. I mean,
Was it middle class?
Kind of
I got the impression it was like upper class.
Well,
Nicky Lauda.
Yeah,
Lauda was upper class. He was upper class because his father kind of worked in banks. He might have been like a bank manager, upper middle then.
Upper middle then.
The thing is, his father refused to continue. Yeah, his father refused to continue to fund his career. So Lauda went and took the loan out himself and essentially bet everything on this loan that he would get it.
But surely he got the loan because they were like, well, Nicky Lauda's dad will pay us if something goes wrong here. Like, he seemed the level of rich when they're like, yeah, if you're a Lauda, you're a politician or you're a lobbyist. You're extorting gangster. I don't know. Like, he sounded very rich from what the film presents it as.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure he did have at least some wealth, and this is true for most F1 drivers, even to this day. There are very few, and even in kind of the Formula 3 and Formula 2 and the kind of the lower formulas, that will have very little money in the family. Even on the F1 grid at the moment. Hamilton, his dad kind of worked sort of 3 jobs in order to fund his karting career, and Esteban Ocon, who most people really slate, but the fact was he'd done a lot of his junior career, hadn't quite made it, and had spent the first night flipping burgers at a McDonald's, and the next day Toto Wolff from Mercedes went, "Come join our program back in." So that's how little money he had. He was starting to work flipping burgers. Most other drivers have some kind of their family owns at least a fairly decently wealthy business, so maybe they're kind of middle class to upper middle class. Some of them are obviously like the sons of billionaires, but most of them sort of 80% odd at least. Their family's earnings maybe sort of 300,000 a year sort of thing, and they're on the lower level. And it's just a sport that you need the money in order to supply it, because at the lower levels, the lower kind of teams kind of need the sponsorship because they need to be able to go out and go racing, and they need money for that. So they'll turn to the drivers and go.
And I didn't cover that even with in this with Hunt and his rich benefactor. Even that can only take him so far. It gets to the point where to get to the major leagues, like, well, now we need sponsorship. We can't go any further with kind of what we've built.
By the way, do y'all have any British gossip about that particular lord? Is that somebody y'all are familiar with?
Never a clue.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I'm just waiting for y'all to be like, and yes, he actually ran a dogfighting ring out of his like.
Probably.
Yeah, no, I would struggle to name him. I can't even remember if he's named after the actual guy, whether he's like a composite character. I can't remember now. What's it called? This is called
live research, guys.
Anthony Bubbles Horsley. Yep, that doesn't sound like a real name. So.
Actually, no, because it doesn't sound like a real name. It probably is
probably
a real
very
name.
Real.
Like, do you know the British aristocracy?
Yeah, but I love the early scenes where
admittedly, but
I love the early scenes where Nicky Lauda first arrives at Ferarri and basically just gives them a dressing down, just rebuilds the car from the ground up, just kind of right. Yeah, it's always think it's a shit box.
You can't say that. It's a Ferrari. It's a shitbox.
So
good.
I love that contrast.
It's a shitbox is a GIF. I have it's a shitbox as a
Yeah.
GIF so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love the contrast between him being a car nerd and just loving motors, and like I almost called him Brad Pitt. Chris Hemsworth is like, oh, I love alcohol and I like Olivia Wilde and other random women. By the
I'll
way,
turn up, I'll go fast
ha-
and leave again.
Don't call Natalie Dormer a random woman.
oh yeah, thank you. I forgot about Natalie. Well, because she's only there at the beginning. But how is Olivia Wilde's accent?
Yeah, she only remembers to do one half the time.
And also, how's Chris Hemsworth's for that matter? Does he try to be
Fine.
British at all?
I mean, look, basically he's doing his Thor voice, which is generic British anyway. So it's just, I suppose it maybe makes it slightly posher for James Hunt, I think. But yeah, he does a decent job. Generally, Australians can do decent British accents to generalize grossly.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, now we've lost Sam.
It's all kicking off today.
My turn next.
And he's back.
Yeah.
He took a pit stop.
So obviously, we eventually get it's the infamous crash. So kind of the track's wet. The Nürburgring, and Lauda spins off, hits the barrier, and his car bursts into flames. They get him out, but not before. He's inhaled a lot of toxic gases, and he receives severe burns to his face. And it's, I mean, this is the kind of the visceral part, isn't it? Kind of the rehabilitation and stuff in hospital. I mean, that's really hard to watch. And I mean, the worst thing for me, I think, is like worse than that, the skin grafts and everything like that. It's the pumping out of his lungs.
Yeah, the lung vacuum.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just
not
absolutely
pleasant.
Kind of horrible. And demonstrate the kind of guy he is. Like, it's like so don't worry, it's all over for stage. Just no, go, do it again.
And I love that he's inspired watching James Hunt race. He's like, that's going to get me back out in a car.
Winning all of his points, as he puts it.
Yeah.
And I have to watching you win all my points. But really, he really did only miss 2 races, didn't he?
This is absolute madman.
That's nuts.
And went back out there, despite not having eyelids anymore. He did have eyelids, kind of reconstructive surgery eventually, but not at that point. So literally in that first race, went back, there's no way to keep the moisture out of his eyes, because there's nothing over anymore.
He only sweats on half his face, so
yeah,
it's true.
These people are mad. There was it's not as bad, but I think in the Moto 2 a number of years ago, Lorenzo Baldassari, who eventually won the season, would win like the first 4 races in 6. Didn't get the championship or anything like that. Tailed off, but the one year he was doing very well. Crashed in the qualifying and dislocated both shoulders. The next day, whilst the race was going on, because he was annoyed, he was told he couldn't race because he wasn't fit enough. He was doing laps in the pool to prove he was fit enough to race the next race in like 2 weekends. So it's like, you've dislocated both shoulders, mate. Take it easy for a day or 2. Like, you don't have to do it. It's insane.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the car burning scene was also the beginning. Like, that's the first half of that scene. Yeah. So I rewatched that, I don't know, first however much, and it didn't connect with me that first Nikki said, oh, we're not changing our tires, and James Hunt says, well, we're not changing our tires, and they just neither of them made that decision just because the other didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a really kind of stunning kind of piece kind of work technically, but I think that would be kind of for naught if it didn't connect emotionally. And I think they do kind of get these characters right, and you do care about them both in different ways, and want to see them kind of succeed or achieve what they want to achieve. I mean, you've got to ask yourself to throw yourself into motorsports of any kind. Do you have to have like some kind of a death wish? Is it like a young man's game because you're fearless when you're young? you think less about your mortality, and you just you can get the exhilaration and the kind of the drive to kind of succeed, kind of carry you through.
Yeah, I think it was it's either Christian Horner or Toto Wolff. So Christian Horner is the current team boss at Red Bull for F1, and Toto Wolff is the current boss at Mercedes. Can't remember which one of them was saying. I think it's Christian Horner because he was a racing driver in his younger days, but he was doing a session in one of the lower formulas, and racing with him at that time was Juan Pablo Montoya, who became a 7-time F1 race winner, and. I can't remember what track it was, but he said he kind of was about to leave the pits at some point, and he was decently successful, the odd podium here or there, climbing way up the rankings. And he apparently saw Montoya like hurtle down the straight, go into this one corner, and just commit fully, kind of, I'm going in here. If the car snaps from out under me, the car snaps from out under me. I don't care. And he apparently just looked at that and went, I can't do that. And he went, as soon as that happens, that's it. You're out. You might as well pack it in. And he kind of, sort of completed that weekend and sort of packed it in. I'm not going to race anymore because I do not have the ability to remove the part of my brain that says I could die at this point. It's you have to have that somewhere in there. And this does actually show that, especially with Lauda coming back in. And I mean, not only this, after this year, he won more championships. He won another 2 world championships. He ended with 3.
Yeah,
it's just like,
I mean, obviously, this primarily, focused, as you said, on like a very limited time period, isn't it? It's but the story did obviously continue after this, and amazingly, he did come back. He came back, immediately after, but then retired for a few years, and then came back again, didn't he? So
one of the it's insane.
That's what's intriguing about Hunt as a character. At the end, Lauda's like, he was satisfied with 1, and it's interesting to see somebody with that kind of mentality succeed, where they had the drive to do it once, and they're like, okay, I'm done. I've accomplished that. And you compare that to like Michael Jordan, who is just the most insane person you've ever met, and all he wanted to do was win. Like it's weird for me to see an athlete who's just cool and is willing to rest on their laurels, and I guess he drove a little more, but he obviously did not win again.
I mean, recently, about 10 years ago, you had Nico Rosberg, who became only the second son of a former world champion to win a world championship. He won it in 2016. Very kind of interesting season. Hamilton had beaten him in the same car for the previous 2 years, and he gets it in the last race of the season. And about a week later goes, I've got my win. This is the goal I set out to achieve. I achieved it. I'm going to retire now. And the entire team was like, what the hell? We've got about 3 months until the next season starts. Now you're dropping this? What the hell's going on? So there are people out there that do that kind of get there. This is what we meant to achieve. I'm now backing out. In the chess world, a couple of years ago, Ding Liren got the chess world championship title. And since then, in the nicest way, he has not been the same. And everyone kind of said there was... post-COVID, he wasn't the same anyway, but the pressure of having that title, just like, he's just dropped through the rankings. He hasn't played a game anywhere near. You've seen glimpses of it, but then he'll make the most ridiculous rookie error as possible. So, everyone was just like, I mean, I was saying when he got it, I really hope, because again, he was the first world champion from China as well. Like, you imagine the pressure of that on you as well. I was like, I really hope he just spends a year fishing. Just give the guy a break. All these sports people, once they've got that and they spent most of their life, because I mean, now, the Formula One drivers will start in go-karts when they're like 4 or 5 years old. Some of the bike riders now start when they're 3, and when they're 25, 26, they finally do this thing that they've been doing their entire life. You just go, I hope at some point you just take some time and just go fishing, do some jigsaws, barbecue, and just go, right, I've done it now. I can see what else in life. And actually going back to the documentary, that was kind of Casey Stoner's thing. He's like, I've achieved what I want to achieve. I'm going to actually live and do bits with my life now.
Well,
and that's with Hunt.
it does seem like Hunt was able to just always live his life of boozing and schmoozing. So
Yeah.
I don't think racing was getting in his way there. It all seemed very natural to him.
Yeah.
Like driving fast cars, and he was good at it, you know.
Lee Iacocca's like, James Hunt doesn't drive a Ford.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was going to wrap up just with so when this did come out, seeing this in cinema with my mate Stefan, we both writing at the time. I had a film blog. He was he was just going to be going into his day job of motorsport journalism. In the lead up to that, he's still doing that today. But we kind of did like a 2-part kind of review of it together. So I did it from like the film critic's perspective, and he did it from like the motorsport fans' perspective. I was going to kind of read out like both our summaries from 12 years ago. This this piece. So I put the pacing, visuals, editing, sound, script, and particularly the performances are near flawless. The film occasionally slips into being a conventional Hollywood sports or biopics movie, but thankfully it finds its feet again quickly through humour, performance, and sheer energy. If Brawl doesn't get recognition for this smartly nuanced take on Louder come awards season, I'd be deeply surprised. Oh, guess what? He didn't.
Didn't get any recognition at all. It's like,
No,
and
no,
every
no.
single person to this day is like up in arms
Got, yeah,
about it.
he got BAFTA and Golden Globe nomination, but this film didn't get any Oscar buzz at all. Amazingly, just find really hard
Utterly
to believe
disgraceful.
today. Yeah, and Stefan put simply, Rush is stunning, and for any motor racing enthusiast to suggest otherwise, based purely on the racing aspects, is missing the point of the film entirely. It's a film which shows the human side of the sport, when having a personality in F1 counted for something, and allows us to remember an incredible battle between two amazing drivers, which was very much real. I mean, that definitely does kind of come across in film, doesn't it? It's about that passion for the sport, kind of that drive, that need to do what you love, and push yourself further and further, and that kind of that rush of endorphins, of adrenaline, as you're as you're driving, kind of, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So yeah. So in contrast, let's go to another film that from a few years later, which is similar in a lot of ways, but different in others.
Yeah. Well, and
it still has a McLaren involved, and there's still Ferraris going around as well. Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
I think I like Ford versus Ferrari more as just sitting down to watch it, but I do think Rush is a bit more clever in its filmmaking. Like, so the main difference between these two for me, I mean, there's a lot of surface differences, but in terms of like how the film is put together, this film has so many more just drawn out sequences, which I do have a preference for. It feels like it's going a little bit more in depth compared to most of Rush is a blur to me. Like it's a lot of things happening in quick succession. Other than like, I think of him driving, that random dude's car when they're hitchhiking. Like it's a great scene, but that's the only one I could think of that really gets to breathe. It's a very fast film, which fits. But I prefer the style of Ford versus Ferrari, where it's a bit, it is a bit more Hollywood, motorsport, or just sport film, I suppose.
I was going to say, there is about a good 40-45 minute difference between the two.
Yeah, it's a long set, but it does get more into like the business side of the sport, doesn't it? Yeah. Which I think is an interesting, different enough take on things. To kind of provide that contrast.
And I
mean, it's called Ford versus Ferrari, but really it is just Ford and Ferrari happen to be there at the end. Let's be fair. Well, and Ferrari are a plot motivator.
What it really is corporatization of art versus artist, and it's about the duel between Carroll Shelby and Enzo Ferrari in spirit. These maverick car designers who want their freedom, and the Leo Bibis of the world that want to tell him what to do and box him in and say, well, you know what? You're going to kill the principal and scream. all right, because we need boobs and we need murder. That's what Leo Beebe represents. This is not a film about Le Mans so much as it is a film about car artistry. Because Shelby is very much the he's portrayed as the American underdog going up against the most legendary sports car ever, and he has to create the American car that will take them down at the biggest 24-hour race that I had never heard of until I saw this movie in 2019.
Part of the Triple Crown. So you've got three races that are considered the Triple Crown of motorsport. You've got the Monaco Grand Prix, you've got the Indy 500, then the Le Mans 24-hour. Only one person has won all three. Lots of people have two.
Including Bruce McLaren.
Yeah, I want to say it's Graham Hill.
It is.
Got all three?
Because I Googled
Yes, it is.
I couldn't remember his name except that his name was Graham or Graham.
Yeah, I thought it was Graham Hill. Yeah, for some reason I got a couple of other names.
Ken Miles is not on the Wikipedia page for the Triple Crown. I guess he didn't win the other. I thought in the movie they say he's going to win a Triple Crown. But pretty much the story is Carol Shelby is the middleman between the people creating the car, like Ken Miles and Pops and all these mechanic folk. And then there's Henry Ford II, who, wants to build his own legacy, come out of his father's shadow with his racing team. There's Lee Iacocca, who's the corporate guy who's like, yeah, racing. And then there's Leo Beebe, who's like, bad guy, corporate guy, and he seems
smarmy.
He seems like a stereotype until you go, oh, this is a true story. Oh, this is a real guy. Oh, he actually defended that he did this in real life and gave so I found a quote because people have written in defense of Leo Beebe articles, but I got this screenshot today. This is from Hemmings.com, someone writing about him before he died. He told Dr. David Lewis, historian and author, Ken Miles, who later died, regrettably didn't win the race that year. I had some real difficulties over that, but he was a daredevil, and I pulled him in and literally engineered the end of that race. 1, 2, 3. I called Ken Miles in and held him back because I was afraid the drivers would knock one another off. All you need is one good accident, and you lose all your investment.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, there are still kind of things of drivers' orders and things like that, of team orders and do things in certain ways. They've tried in Formula One. They tried to ban it at one point because they thought it was engineering stuff. They banned it after Michael Schumacher had a thing where his teammate Barrichello, who was always the number 2 driver, was winning, and Ferrari went, let Michael win the race. And like even on the podium, Michael took his trophy, number 1, and handed it to Barrichello, and they banned it. The trouble was, in like 2010, 11, I think it was, Felipe Massa was in front and Alonso coming up behind, and this is at the point where they banned it. And they went over the radio and went, Felipe Massa, they went, Felipe, Alonso is faster than you. Do you understand? Alonso is faster than you. Can you confirm Alonso is faster than you? And everyone's like, this is a team order. And to this day, it's just like a famous phrase. So they have done team orders, and it's still to this day, do we let them race? Do we not? Because the number 1 rule in motorsport is, Frank Williams, who set up Williams F1 and passed away a couple of years ago, his thing was, I do not care which one of you wins as long as you don't take each other out. Like, I do not care who wins. This is the number 1 rule.
That's the thing about being like a team sport, Formula One. It's like, surely there's potential for you to just scupper each other. I mean,
you can do that.
I mean, can you work together effectively to kind of...
So Talladega Nights, they shake and bake.
In most things, and I mean, Le Mans now is part of the World Endurance Championship as well. So there are multiple races that Le Mans is one of. But in all of these kind of series, whatever, when you've got these teams things, you normally have two a championship. So you have a drivers' championship and you have a constructor championship. The drivers is individual winner with the most points, and that kind of gets the kudos. But the constructors' championship, I mean, in Formula One, especially down the lower order, that's where the prize money is handed out. And especially down the lower orders, something between like, I don't know, ninth and 10th place, that could be the difference of, I don't know, $15 million. So sometimes it is kind of, we need that one extra point. The guy behind is has the chance to possibly go up and take 10th place, which is the 1 point you need. Can you please move over? I know it's not fair and you're going to finish ahead of him, but we need that 1 point because there's like $15 million riding on it.
Well,
and
in this
stuff like that
movie,
happens.
they kind of shunt, Bruce McLaren, and I don't even know who the other guy is. And then I don't even know who the other three guys are that are the alternate drivers in these vehicles. No clue. They say their names at some point, but I only know Bruce McLaren because, McLaren. So,
Yeah. It's Bruce McLaren, Chris Amon, and somebody else. Both of those were F1 drivers. Let me see if I can. It was the 1965 Le Mans, wasn't it?
or 66.
Yeah, but they were in. They get sent to 65 instead of Ken Miles.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Well,
work out.
I think in real life, Ken Miles did go, and they just put that in the movie for dramatic effect.
Phil Hill, Chris Amon, and Bruce McLaren. Yeah, Phil Hill, I'm fairly sure was another. He won the F1 championship in 1961. Hilariously enough, with Ferrari.
Well, and
It was American, so you got one.
So the first sort of we get the story of Carroll Shelby winning Le Mans, and then he can't race anymore. Oh no, Matt Damon, by the way, I mean he's pretty good. Like he's real good playing a Southern good old boy from Texas.
Cowboy,
I
was gonna say the Texan would know.
I watched The Departed this week as well. So two completely different Matt Damons. He's gained a little weight here. He's a little older. He's excellent. And then Christian Bale. This is another I lost 40 pounds for this role. Christian Bale performance. Yeah. I mean he's all in. Yeah. He's great in this movie. He's so good.
He's so good.
Was this the first Birmingham accent you'd ever heard, Jacob?
Not if you've seen Peaky Blinders.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know. You know what? I would have said that this is a blue collar British man, just based on his accent.
Yeah, I mean Birmingham, I think is the accent is classic working class, hard working kind of accent, stereotypically,
in the smokestacks,
it's a big industrial sissy.
I like that he's come to the U.S. and adopted wearing a cowboy hat, so he fits in.
It's to be honest, like that performance of Bale, I think is probably better than his Batman performances. I think it is one of the best of his career. It's so good, and it's so nice to hear him, using. I'm not sure if it is his accent or it is near enough his accent rather than the American one he has to put on in the nicest way to the American. He does it very well because he's a very good actor.
Yeah.
But it's nice.
I mean, he's Welsh born, but you'd never guess it to hear him in interviews. He's got quite a neutral, like natural kind of speaking voice. I think probably just from a career of doing other people's voices.
He sounds different than he does in The Prestige, and that's sort of my English Bale. That's where my brain goes. But yeah, he's incredible. The dude who plays Henry Ford, so apparently he did not read anything about Henry Ford II. He didn't study him. He was like, I'm just going to read the lines, and I'm going to be sort of a doddery old man who almost poops himself in a race car. Great scene.
That one scene does have, I think, my new favorite. Watching bits of this back because I've seen it before. I just watched bits for time reasons. And watching that scene back, it does have when they kind of pull to the stop, and he breaks out in kind of laughing, crying tears, and then immediately switches to "I wish Daddy had been alive to see this." And it's like that suddenly is the rare human moments that movies like this need out of
Yeah.
nowhere from characters that aren't like the main two.
Yeah. Well,
Because
and
sometimes those characters
especially
just become plot
because
devices.
especially because Henry Ford is Henry Ford. Like
Yeah.
the dude, he does not seem human. And so seeing his son just have that little moment, you're right. That is great.
Yeah. And the fact that, I mean, they're always saying to, was it Enzo Ferrari even says it at the beginning to him when they try and take over Ferrari, and he goes, "You're not Henry Ford." So you have this that obviously the name and the legacy
Yeah.
is the important thing to him, and living up and becoming, you know, on a par, but something new and different in a weird Inception thing going also
Yeah.
for Nolan and
I,
Bale.
I do like how in both these films, Enzo Ferrari is kind of like this almost like it's like mostly off-screen kind of antagonistic kind of force. Obviously he's got a few lines in this, but he's just there
Yeah,
in passing and rush. But it's just he's always there. He's always watching. But
yeah,
you're not. He's going to remain like an enigma. It's like Sauron or something like the Eye of
yeah.
Sauron, the Eye of Ferrari is on you.
Yeah. The what is it? The just the race sound, the vehicle engine sounds in this movie are really satisfying. I think at some point earlier this year, I don't remember why, I was hating James Mangold. Oh, because of his Timothy Chalamet movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, like the dude is insanely competent. He makes enjoyable
Yes.
movies. It's just he doesn't take it to another level the way I would like it to.
Yeah, yeah. They're not usually finding new things through the form, are they? They're very maybe safe is a bit mean, but they're not really pushing the envelope, are they? They're
Yeah.
just
They're kind of very good, exactly what you'd expect movies.
Yeah.
yeah. It's technically solid. Very little to complain about, but at the same time, little to kind of remember afterwards that, oh yeah, that was
Yeah,
great, apart from like the odd like small moment as you mentioned, Kieran. I mean, like Logan is full of those kind of small moments that make it, that elevate it beyond what it
yeah.
otherwise would be. It's
And I
those
think
kind of human
Did
interactions that help.
mm,
did James Mangold come into film directing by like directing theater? Like that's the impression I get as I watch more and more of his movies. Like just he's
No,
he's an
actually.
actor's director is just how he seems
I,
to be now.
I mean, the earliest film of his I'm aware
no,
of
went
is
to film school
all
at
right,
Columbia.
okay. Yeah, the earliest film of
Studied
his I'm
under
aware
Milos
of
Forman.
is a Copland, because
Yeah,
that was another one from him, and which again I think he gets attached to these scripts, and kind of just waits the right time, to actually, when he's available to make them again. I mean, he's supposed to do a Star Wars film next, I think, at some point, but
didn't we already? Oh, that'll go into competition with Rise of Skywalker for the safest Star Wars movie you could possibly come out
yeah.
with, surely.
I,
And
Well,
Star Wars
apparently,
fans are going to get
the
up in arms about that as well.
the concept of his is a Star Wars biblical film, which is kind of
ooh,
interesting. It's called
Star Wars is
Dawn of the
already
Jedi.
biblical. What are we doing? Like,
Luke
Yeah,
parts the
Buddhist,
blue
I
milk
guess.
sea.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean the film
He
is.
said, "Let my people go."
I'm not even going to bother saying anything now because he's just gone and ruined it. I
Sorry.
can't even remember what I was going to say now because he's just gone and. He's milking that joke for all it's worth. Anyway,
Um, I do think that they shouldn't have shown Ken Miles dying. They could have just said he died. It would have been better to watch him drive off into the sunset.
Yeah.
And it's things like that that just it's a little sappy with the kid watching his dad die. The sunsets behind Carroll Shelby as he's like, we're gonna make Ford the best vehicle in racing, and it just come and it's just so over dramatic. It's beautiful, but it's a little over the top. I don't know.
Yeah.
I could stand for just a bit more edge
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And just how it looks as well. Obviously, yeah, the racing scenes again are very visceral and well done. Some of the lots of scenes at sunsets though, and oftentimes very obviously CG assisted sunsets.
Yeah.
They kind of they look kind of look more artificial than they should, I'd say.
Yeah. Or just
I
like
mean,
however they graded it in post or anything like that. It
Yeah,
is
yeah,
way over the
it
top.
might be something. It might be something to do with the grading, yeah, as you say. But yeah, it just doesn't quite look as it should. It looks a bit jarring.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple of other things scenes in this film that again I think really touch on the kind of the more human side. There's the argument in the car with his wife. You
Yeah,
know, she's like, I thought you'd given this up because she knows it's ridiculously dangerous. This is the 60s in motor
yeah,
racing. You know,
yeah,
Mercedes didn't go in, pulled out of Formula One from 55 to 2010 because there was an accident and they went, we're not going to do it. Switzerland
yeah.
banned
Which
motor racing
is
completely
there
from
a movie about the
I mean,
Levette crash? Because I would watch that. That is an
yeah,
insane story.
I don't think so, but there probably should be, you know. And so she kind of like, how dare you? It's like, I can't stop you doing this, but it's also my life on the line. It's also our child's life on the line, you know, and all this stuff. And then it's like, how much did he offer you? It's like 200 a day. And she's like, are you serious? You said you'd think about this, you know. This is gonna
yeah,
save. So and there's that switch that I like. And then obviously you have midway through in testing the fireball crash that happens as well, where he has to walk out of it, and for a split moment you go, oh my god, is he actually going to get out of this, you know? It's
yeah,
like all three
yeah,
films have had moments of kind of big impact about midway through, that
yeah,
could have ended in tragedy, one way or the other. And I think just stuff like that again with the kid watching. I'm not sure if that actually happened. I'm not up on my Le Mans stuff as much,
yeah,
but it's the kind of thing that probably did. And it's just those moments where he comes out after and you've got the kid kind of asking sort of the questions of the mechanic, you know, do people die, you know? It's like, well, they're covered in fireproof suits. It's like, but this guy died and this guy died,
yeah,
and now you want my
yeah,
dad to go and race it in the
yeah,
most tricky, car destroying
yeah.
race in the world in another
I,
country.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's key that he's the family are, you know, very prominent in this. You know, that
Mm,
it's them. You know, wait. It's almost like waiting at home for like someone who's gone to war. You know, to come home, isn't it? It's that
yeah,
kind of feel. I mean, I give a you know, got to give her credit. Katrina Balfe in this is really good as Molly.
yeah,
I think she kind of portrays that kind of barely holding it together, kind of frustration with her husband a lot of the
yeah,
time. You know, and I say that meltdown in the car is fantastic.
yeah,
Um, I mean, the cast in general are really good. Obviously, you know, aside from
yeah,
you know, Matt Damon, Christian Bale, John Bernthal, Josh Lucas is excellent playing another dickhead. So he just does that so well. You know, as BB. It's a really good cast, and I think the human side of the sport, yeah, really comes through.
yeah. Well, we should obviously say, and just for the accolades, that this did get nommed for Best Picture at the Oscars. It won Best Film
Mm.
Editing and Best Sound Editing. And Christian Bale did get noms for the Golden Globe and Screen Actors Guild Award. Probably a load of other stuff as well that I haven't read out. Those are going to be the main ones. It's kind of one of these things that kind of got nommed for pretty much almost everything going and didn't win as much as it should have done. But the trouble is, this is sort of like, it came out in 2019, so
About
going
10
off like
years too
2020
late.
Oscars. Well, there's also the fact that you think of all the stuff that came out that year.
Cats.
Uh, very possibly, but it's also been going up for the Oscars in 2020, which means that, if nothing else, Parasite is there.
Parasites.
You know, it's like, it's something like this. You'd go, actually,
The Irishman.
The Irishman, Parasite, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you know, all this stuff is coming out that year.
1917.
Yeah, and it's just like, this one's kind of getting shuffled back in the mix now, you know? It's like, it's no fault of its own. It's just the fact that everything else came out that year. It's like, this is impossible to come.
It's the top tier standard Hollywood style movie versus things that are way more interesting and just flat out better movies. Like, I'd rather watch I don't know. I'm torn between this and Jojo Rabbit, but that's more a Taika Waititi thing than anything else. But
I was going to say, yeah, that year for Best Picture, you had Parasite, Ford vs Ferrari, Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, you're not going to break anywhere in that, really, are you? It's just not going to happen.
Personally, I'd take Joker and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood off the list before I took Ford v Ferrari off the list.
Yeah.
I think this is at the bottom of the pack. It's towards the bottom end of the pack, but it's not by no means the worst film that was nominated that year.
Hilariously enough, do you know who won Best Actor in a Supporting Role that year? Bringing it kind of full circle.
the little kid from Jojo Rabbit, who is actually now a motorcycle racer.
Is he genuinely?
I don't know. I made that up.
Hilariously enough, Brad Pitt won it. Bringing it full circle at all.
It's like the Illuminati playing this podcast for us.
Yeah, Ford vs Ferrari or Le Mans 66 in some countries through trademark reasons and essentially marketing reasons.
Yeah, what is it in the UK?
Le Mans 66.
Le Mans 66.
I know it is Le Mans 66.
Ford v Ferrari is a much better title for a movie.
Americans are too dumb to know what Le Mans is, so we're going to call it Ford.
Les Mans. Yeah, they probably know a bit more now, and I do know people that have been. I've not done Le Mans. Occasionally, I'll flick it on and have it going for like an hour in the background. I don't know if people have been yet, but it probably because a lot of the Formula One drivers occasionally will flick into it. Curiously enough, Valentino Rossi was racing at Le Mans this year, and also I think he's done it a couple of times. But Michael Fassbender has done a couple of times as well. In the various different categories, you can have amateur races.
He took a couple of years out of acting just to race cars, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, like Michael Fassbender, what do you want to do? I want to
go fast,
race at Le Mans. Okay, because you have several categories of car, and so you kind of the overall winner for the fast one, then different classes.
Yeah, Michael Mann's done a bit of it as well when he was a bit younger as well. It's a big motorsport fan. I mean,
he did Ferrari,
I suppose I suppose the other big motorsport film to do in a future episode will be Ferrari. Maybe when we come to do a full episode of Michael Mann, that might be
the other unfortunate Hollywood motorsport fan is James Dean. He was a big motorsport guy. Yeah. I think he also took time off to race. Like, that's not a joke. I think he legitimately like took time off from movies to race. Fassbender.
He took a lot of time off because of cars. I thought that's where you were going.
No, I meant legitimately. He was into the sport. The other thing was like, wasn't he on his way to a race too whenever he died?
I think he might have been.
Okay. Well, sorry. This is James Dean.
And on that bleak note,
yep.
Time to end.
There is a Le Mans 1955 animated film. So, yeah. Well, that's it till next time, guys. Until then, where can people find you?
That's the checkered flag. Yeah.
You can find
caution flag up.
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Second Cut Pod Substack, where my most recent review is Batman Begins 20th anniversary review. So yeah, see how that's aged over time and how it's influenced like lots of other films as well. Yeah, I
was going to say Batman Begun a while ago. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Another connection. Christian Bale's in that.
There we go. And hopefully you don't find me anywhere. If you do, I'm Kid Judgmental on the various places on the internets and at the Second Cut Substack, where I've got a review of 28 Years Later now up. And hopefully in the next few days, I will be getting around to at least the F1 movie. And if nobody else takes it, I may also get to go see Megan 2.0 as well. Or M3gan, as my my lecturer calls it and refuses to call it anything else.
You can find me at In 1954, James Dean became interested in developing a career in motorsport. He purchased various vehicles for filming for East of Eden had concluded, including a tire. Whatever. He was a real racer, all right? At Jacob Film Guy.
Okay. We weren't doubting you.
he was on his way to the Salinas Road Race when he crashed. So I knew I had read all about his death pretty well on Wikipedia. So at Jacob Film Guy for more James Dean facts. Maybe I'll rank his movies. I'll do that. That'll be my article for the year.
Wow, that's going to take you all of 5 minutes.
But that's it. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.